Our lives are a string of insights, flashes of inspiration that can be the catalyst for new ideas. However, our pace of life these days means we tend to miss some of them completely. I'm Dave Hill, and I'm the host of the Simple Reflections Podcast, a fortnightly series of interviews with people from all walks of life. Our conversations are an invitation to reflect on some of the simple insights my guests have had that have gone on to have a profound impact on their lives. So grab a cuppa and a biscuit, join us, slow down for a little while and see what shows up for you. Well, welcome to the next episode of the Simple Reflections Podcast. Today I'm joined by Julia Rebholz. Julia works with insight principles and has done for a while now, but that's not where her background lies. She was originally involved in fairly strategic mergers and acquisition and large-scale transformation programs at a really big level, but somewhere along the line has ended up working in the principles world and looking at taking the principles into organizations to help them navigate whatever they're up to in a more comfortable way. And she's also the host of the Generative Leaders Podcast. And welcome, Julia. It's lovely to have you with us today.
Thanks, Dave. Lovely to be here with you.
No worries. Well, I just wondered if there's anything that's been showing up for you recently that would be interesting to explore, anything around our understanding of the world as it unfolds in front of us from a position of insight or whatever. So I don't know if there's anything there that chimes for you at the moment.
I think that the thing that's been showing up for me a lot over the last month in many different guises, as it were, and is very alive for me is this human form that we live in, and it's health or non-health, it's ease and disease, and the circle of life, and how we process all of that experience, whether it be within ourselves or whether it be in others, and so that's what's been really alive for me over the past sort of 6 weeks or so.
Cool. That's why it's one of those topics that health is something that we tend to not pay any attention to when everything's going well. But when things aren't, they all of a sudden become very much in focus. And I've certainly got experience of that in the last 3 or 4 weeks with a trip to hospital, a dodgy knee, a period on antibiotics, and all of the various bits of painful stuff that go with all of that, and trying to be sit as comfortably with that despite the discomfort of what my body's getting up to, and noticing how occasionally I get caught in that. Yeah, no, it's a fascinating subject to see where that takes us, and the realization that the story we're creating about all of that stuff is literally just that. It's the best we've got in the moment until another bit of information turns up that changes that dynamic.
Well, yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing to explore, because it's when you're gripped with a disease or a virus, it feels like there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of things to do. It's that kind of, how can I get rid of this as quickly as possible? And it's really interesting because there's when you become unhealthy, it takes you away from all of the things you'd planned in your mind. So we're all walking around with a list in our heads of things that we've got to do or get done, or we'd planned to do, or we'd like to do. And then this thing called a virus comes along, or something else that kind of invades the form in which we live in, And we sort of get caught between this. Yes, I know I'm not very well, and I know that all the advice says that I should sleep and rest and take care of myself. I really want to be doing the things that I that I had, planned in my mind. And I think it's such an interesting metaphor for life, because we think we're in control of all of these things that we're going to do and make happen. And sometimes life has other plans. And our ability to sort of see that in the moment, to see, okay, yes, I had this plan, and now I've got to let go of that plan and accept what's actually happening. Is where the suffering happens.
Yeah. Whatever the subject matter.
Yeah.
I was having a conversation earlier with nothing to do with health, but everything to do with someone's plans and aspirations. And while I was planning that this would have happened by July, and it hasn't. And initially I was angry with that and upset, and then I realized that didn't make any sense. And here here that individual is now sitting here going, well, I'm not where I wanted to be in July, but I seem to be at peace with that now. Still not where I'd like to be, but I realized that the July bit was made up, and I'm not quite sure what's going to replace July, and nor do I need to know that right now, because when it's ready, it'll be ready. And that's without an understanding of the principles. The principles got nothing to do with that, but everything to do with it at the same time. Someone had a view of the world. They got to that point. It didn't happen. They got upset with that. They realized it didn't make sense. Nothing has changed except their capacity to live more comfortably.
Yeah. And I think that's what happens when we're, in a period of unhealthiness. And suffering. We sort of bump up against these thoughts that we had, and that we've become really attached to, and then having to let go of them and kind of be with what is, and that whole kind of, yes, well, right now I should be doing blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, who created the should? Who created the should?
Yeah, absolutely. Or other people's expectations of what it is that we had all planned to do at this moment in time, but actually my body's not up to it. Do I push on through and turn up and do it, do my best but mediocre job? Or do we go, actually, does this make sense to continue? Or can you carry on without me? Which,
exactly.
Yeah, no one necessarily likes the idea that everything can carry on without them, but it generally does. There's not normally much that we can do, or that those around us can't do without us. There are exceptions to that occasionally, but there's normally a solution somewhere in there. It all comes back to the stories we're creating and how much we hold them as truth, and hold ourselves account to them.
Yeah, it is. And I've become a very keen house planterer over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, and I was sort of reflecting on my plants, and that there's times when I'm I really take care of them, and I feed them and I water them, but they still get sick. And it's a sort of natural, it's a very natural part of life, for things to get for things to get sick. And it's almost like a growth, before a growth period, there's a whole bunch of things that have to kind of be shed and in the plant world, it's, all the leaves falling and sort of going into that period. And I think we're not able to see that in ourselves, because it's all happening invisibly on the inside all the time. We're not able to see the skin that's shedding. Although lots of women do notice, the hair fall, more hair coming out in the shower. And it's sort of how, if you can not get freaked out by that, and you can kind of recognize that it's just a normal part of life. And it's, it's a normal evolution that's happening all the time. Then maybe there's more peace with that as well.
Yeah. There's a sort of general, it's a very general way of looking at it in my mind. But when we get caught up in a story, a set of circumstances that we would like, and the friction that we feel around that, we can tend to attribute that to the desired outcome, or the thing that's not happening yet, or whatever it happens to be, the story itself, and think that needs to be solved before I can feel better. Until something else shows up entirely that shows us that that's not the way. Like that chap I was speaking to earlier, who got angry and upset because his plan hadn't gone the way he'd liked, and then realised that there was no sense in that. The logic in the design of how we operate, the fact that we live from moment to moment, from thought to thought, and that we can fall out of the understanding, or not even that, we can fall out of seeing that and knowing that to be true, and get caught back in the story again. And there's that constant play between the two. I have no idea where I was going with that. Anyway, right. That's a burst.
Well, that's okay, Dave.
Yeah, it's completely okay. And that's, that's part of it. That's part of the fun of it. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Things trip us up. My train of thought disappeared there. So what? Doesn't matter. And we will see where that ends up, where that takes the conversation, because who knows? There's so many different options in any moment of what the outcome might be. The capacity for us to be able to move through that with ease is infinite. It's always there. The potential for me to get caught up in the fact that I lost my train of thought and I don't know where I was trying to go with it is something that is also possible, and I could beat myself up about. But it doesn't have to be that way. And that's what's so fun with exploring this in as gentle a way as possible, is being able to highlight where we can get stuck completely innocently, and how very simple it is for us to pop out of that naturally and sort of bounce back, no matter what it is that's we got stuck off in the first place.
I think it's really interesting for me to sort of reflect back over the last 10 years, and 10 years ago I didn't know that I was a thinker. I just didn't know. I knew that I had thoughts, and that thoughts would come into my mind, but I didn't know that my life was created via thought. I thought there was life, and then sometimes I would have a voice in my head that would speak to me, and that's what I knew as thought. It was this voice that spoke to me from time to time. And now it's so interesting to sort of reflect on the fact that thought is the only thing that's creating my experience every single moment. And it's everything, it's not just that voice in my head. It's my ability to feel the warmth of the cup that's sitting between my hands right now. It's my ability to experience you on a screen. It's the ability to hear my own speech, and be able to tune into that from time to time. And there's some comfort in that. There's some comfort in knowing that to be true, because it's almost like I was given the remote control, and I was like, oh, I can press the pause button from time to time, and recenter and adjust and have everything slow back down again, and not be consumed with everything that's overwhelming my system at any one moment. And what that has done for me is just to take life a lot less personally. There's life just is happening, and my experience of life is being created from moment to moment to moment.
Yeah. And it's the same for everybody, everywhere.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's, it's such a fascinating exploration to notice that.
Yeah.
I was shared some very sad news the other day that a friend of mine has been diagnosed with inoperable pancreatic cancer, and it was so interesting to watch my experience go from sadness to how much love I felt for him, and how much joy we'd had together, and the memories that we had, sort of spent together. And that sort of moment of recognizing that the thought that sort of appeared in my head is, wow, how lucky have I been to see his bloom and to be around that. And now it's time. Now it's time for that to wither and go back to the source once it came. And I contrast that with an experience of another friend who is no longer with us 10 years ago, and the suffering that I had around their passing, and how it's a very different experience. There's sadness absolutely in both, in both. But one was a much more, how will I cope without this person? How will I be without this person? How can I live in the world without this person? Whereas this one was much more of a, how lucky had I been to be blessed by this person? And there was a lot more peace in my experience.
No, well, thank you for sharing it. And I'm sorry to hear about your friend. That's terribly sad news. But it's also wonderful how you expressed that sadness and gratitude and feeling blessed is all wrapped up in the same in the same story to a degree, and that your previous experience isn't necessarily, as you're experiencing now, isn't a sort of line in the sand, sort of marker for how things are going to be every time we experience this, which so many people have as a, oh my goodness, I don't handle X, Y, Z, whatever it happens to be, I don't handle that well, and they try and avoid it, or step around it for whatever reason, because they're afraid of opening themselves up to that experience, afraid of letting others down, whatever it might be. But that was just an experience at a point in time, which made perfect sense for you back then.
Yeah, I think that we've got this infinite capacity to learn and grow, and it's like every moment is a learning opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Every experience is a learning opportunity, or not.
Yeah.
We have the choice to sort of see it both ways, and I've been having an interesting time with my son at the moment. He's been very sick this week. Illness again,
Mm-hmm.
back in the topic, and he's been really struggling with it. He's been really suffering with it, and and he's been talking to me. And there are times when I just jump right in there with advice about what he should do. And he's 17, and most of the time he doesn't want my advice.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this week I've been having that moment of, this urge to give him advice and tell him what to do with this, and then going, oh, that's a habit. That's
yeah.
That's just an automatic habit that I have developed over 17 years of being his mum and caring for him. And so, we had a little joke in the week, because I said to him, I said, I really need to get better at, asking you whether you want me to just listen, give you advice, or say something else.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, yeah, you're terrible at it. You just jump right in there with the advice. And you said you wouldn't do that with your clients, so why are you doing it with me? And I was like, you're so right. You're so right.
Yeah. No, it's funny how we get into sort of default mode in certain situations, and equally, when we're alive to it, when we see it, oh, right, that's not helpful, is it? And we can then have conversations that will help others help us realize it and be more alive to it. So you're absolutely allowed to say, sorry, but that's not necessary just now. Oh, cool, thank you. It's about creating the conditions for things to change, rather than just keeping our fingers crossed, blindly ploughing on.
Exactly. Well, there's sort of 3 stages of change, isn't there? There's, you can be completely unaware of habits that you have, and you walk around with them, and then you can be aware of the habits that you have, but not do anything about them. But at least you're aware.
Mm.
And if you're aware, then there's a possibility for something to change. And that's what I find so interesting is, every time I stumble into one of my habits of my default way of dealing with, whatever experience, I sort of always have that moment, oh, the first step is to be aware. Okay, good. Now I'm aware. Okay. And then sometimes I see it in the moment and I adjust and I adapt. And other times I go, well, there's another learning opportunity.
Yeah, I'm sure this won't be the last, but noted. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, are the odds getting better? Is it because when you start, it's well, it's 100% habit all the time, and then it's like, oh, now it's only 98% progress.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's I was having a conversation earlier on with a guy I'm doing a course with at the moment. So we're doing elements of peer coaching, and I sort of got to the point of realizing that we are perpetual works in progress. Sometimes we'll see it, sometimes we won't. But if we ever catch on to thinking that we are the finished article, then we're lining ourselves up for a fall. And being comfortable being a perpetual work in progress means that we're always on the lookout for those learning opportunities, and excited about what it is that's going to show up. And it's a fun game to be part of at that level.
Well, my mum watched the Marigold Hotel film
Right.
some time ago, and it's actually always been her saying, but she sort of figured out where it came from. Of everything will be all right in the end, and if it's not all right, it's not the end. And so she's like, well, everything will be all right just before you die. So you're a work in progress until then.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's always the more and more I've seen for myself that we just have this perpetual ability to experience something and learn from that experience and see the wisdom in it. I can change.
Yeah.
And that gives me hope. I look at the war in Israel that's happening at the moment, and it's sort of like this is a habit. This is a habit between two sides at the moment, and it's causing absolute devastation.
Mm-hmm.
And I have such compassion for both sides of what they're going through, and then just see this is humanity's habit.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point things will change. Things will change because that's the sort of, it's how we're designed. We're designed to keep changing, to keep adapting, to keep evolving. Now, whether it's good or it's bad, who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's how we're designed.
Yeah. No, it is a very sad state of affairs. But as you're saying, the capacity for something to shift is there, and that's the hope that lies in the problem, both there and in Ukraine and all over the place. There is always, no matter how entrenched two sides might be in their potentially hatred of each other and what they stand for and all the rest of it, how that can soften and change, and that's okay. It's the well, we've been holding on to this for so long, we can't possibly change our mind. We'll look, whatever, insert whatever adjective you want to at that point. It just takes a moment for someone to say, what about this? And for it to land in a way that just settles things. And it's really unlikely to be instant, but equally it's hugely possible if people are open to that possibility, rather than seeing it as, well, this is how it's always been. We've always been like this. Going to keep going.
Yeah, and I think it's I'd say it's more subtle than that, Dave, because whether people are open or not, who knows whether they are or not.
Mm.
But the truth is, there's the capacity.
Yeah.
And there's a capacity to see something new, and there's a capacity to change. And that's one of the reasons I started the Generative Leaders podcast, was that I see a world that's not working for us at the moment. And every single human being on this planet has the capacity to do something about that. So they don't need to be a leader in a position of power or in an organization. They just need to see the capacity that they have the agency to do something differently in the house that they live in the street that they live in the community that they live in. And if we all start to see that we all have the agency to do something, then that's where change really starts.
Yeah. And I read, I can't remember if it was today or yesterday, I read something else of that. I haven't, whatever I do won't change anything, said 8 billion people. Well, if 8 billion people turned around and said, right, I can do this, who knows where that could take us? And, there's hope in that. There's real hope in that.
There's a real hope in that. And, there's ideas falling into 8 billion people's minds every single day.
Yeah.
Now, whether they act on them or not is something, but the fact of these ideas falling into people's head isn't going to change.
No.
It's just part of the design of the system. And so that to me is very, very hopeful. And it's Mother Nature's way of kind of giving us an out.
Yes. Right. You've had your fun making a mess. Now. Let's see what you can do with what you're capable of doing. Off you go.
Yeah. I mean, it really does look to me like that. It's like, come on then, show me what you got. Show me what you can do. And, the more we start holding each other with those eyes and that mind, maybe there's a shift. Maybe there's a shift that happens.
Yeah. Combination of sort of curiosity and encouragement, and cheering on from the sidelines. Going, cool. Well, yeah, that's exciting. What's that about? Show me more, please. I'm all ears. What's that about?
Yeah. Exactly. But it starts at home, and we all have our habits, and we all need to let go of our habits and see about those.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, no, Julia, sorry, thank you. That's been really, really fun. Thank you very much indeed. I'll obviously share a link to the Generative Leaders Podcast, but is there anything else that you are up to at the moment that you'd like to share with those that are listening?
No, if anybody wants to get in touch, they can find me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile is just Julia Rebholz, and you'll find a link to the Generative Leaders Podcast on there. And if you want to get in touch with Insight Principles or know more about Insight Principles, you can find that at insightprinciples.com. We run a number of open programs if people want to come and join and have some fun. But thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
Thank you very much for coming. And on that last point of those open programs, I've done one of them and it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And it's what introduced me to you. So thank you very much indeed for coming. It's been lovely to spend time with you.
Thanks, Dave.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the conversation, feel free to subscribe and join me and my new guest next time. If you're interested in the work I'm doing, or you think I can be of service to you or your organisation, please email dave@simplicityofmind.co.uk. Remember, see if you can find time to slow down and reflect. Those simple ideas might be worth listening to. Take care, and I hope you can join me in a couple of weeks.